Hello viewers, welcome to Diagnostics. Dio here. Today we have a 2018 Dodge Ram with a 3.0 liter. The customer brought this car here to us because the truck was losing power tremendously. So the customer told me that she was on her way to the airport to drop off her daughter, and then all of a sudden the truck started losing power. The check engine light came on, the check transmission light came on. After that, she could not go over 45 miles an hour. So it went into a limp mode. So she drove straight here to the shop. When she got here, she turned off the truck. She came to tell me the problem. When I went to the truck, I couldn't start it. So it became a no crank, no start condition. So what we know is the vehicle had lost power previously, and then when she brought it here to the shop, it became a no crank, no start. So we actually had to push the truck inside the shop. Right now I can't start it. So she brought it here so we can figure out why this truck lost power and why this truck is not starting right now. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna confirm the customer's complaint. We're gonna go inside the vehicle and try to start it. I'm sure it's not gonna start. We're gonna try to start it, and then after confirming the customer's complaint, we're going to connect a scan tool to the vehicle to see what kind of trouble codes we have in the engine computer. After we retrieve the trouble codes, then we will talk about what directions we're going to go so we can fix whatever that's causing this truck to not start and lose power. So now let's go inside the truck and confirm the customer's complaint. Alright guys, so now we're going to confirm the customer's complaint. I'm going to step on the brake pedal and I'm gonna push this push start button. After stepping on the brake pedal, if you push this start button twice, the truck is supposed to start. So let's see what happens. I can hear the fuel pump running. I don't know if you can hear it. So I'm pressing the push start button. Nothing is happening. Okay. So customer's complaint confirmed. As you can see, the truck doesn't start. So we have confirmed the customer's complaint. Now, one thing I noticed was when we pushed the truck inside the shop, I noticed that there are messages here on the dash. There is a message here that says service transmission. Let's wait. That message is going to be displayed there, right there. Service electronic brakes. And then there's another one that says service transmission. So there are a bunch of lights on the dash right now. So right there. So there's that light, service transmission, continue in drive, do not shift or turn engine off until you reach a desired location. You may not be able to shift again until serviced. So basically what that is saying is that, you know, whatever that's happening is telling the driver to drive to a service facility, because if the engine get turned off, you can't start it again. And that's what happened actually, because when the customer got here, she turned it off. After that, it became a no crank, no start condition. Okay, so it looks like there's something going on with the transmission. The other thing I noticed is when you look here on this gear selector, you will see that all these lights are lit up. Okay, the park light, the reverse light, the neutral light, and the drive light. So the light on the drive. So basically, this tells me that there are modules here that don't know what gear the transmission is in. Okay, so we're most likely dealing with a communication problem, because when you have all these lights light up like this, so this is on a good working truck. When you are in park, only the light above the P comes on. When you are in reverse, the light above the R comes on, and so on. Okay, so if you see all of them coming on like this, it means there's a problem. So now that we have confirmed the customer's complaint, I'm going to get a scan tool connected to the truck so we can read the codes. I'm gonna connect the scan tool and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright, so I got the scan tool connected to the vehicle, so I'm gonna bring up our scan tool here. So I need to make sure that I mention this. So whatever that's causing all these lights to come on is what's disabling the vehicle from starting, because right now the truck doesn't start because of all these lights that are on. I'm sure what's happening is that the other modules, like the ECM for example, doesn't know what gear the transmission is in. That's why this truck doesn't start. Okay, so I'm pretty sure something went wrong with the transmission, or something is going on with the transmission control unit. The ECM has disabled the engine to protect the transmission. Okay, so this doesn't start. The no crank no start condition is being caused by this, or by whatever that's causing all these lights to come on. Once we can figure out what the problem is on the transmission side, this truck will start. Okay, the ECM is not starting the truck because it doesn't know what gear the transmission is in. So now let's scan this. Alright, so right there the scan tool has identified the vehicle, so let's click OK. Alright, so since we have a couple lights on the dash, I'm gonna do a code scan. This is gonna scan all the modules on the vehicle. So let's give the scan tool a couple seconds until it finishes scanning all the modules on the vehicle. Alright, so the scan tool is done scanning all the modules on the vehicle. So right off the bat, we have 3 trouble codes in the engine computer. The first one is U0103-00, lost communication with electric gear shift module. And then the other one is U0101-00, lost communication with TCM, active, pending. And then the third one is U3017-00, control module timer / clock performance, pending. Okay, so we have communication codes on the engine computer. So let's scroll down and see what kind of trouble codes we have in the other modules. We have 2 codes in the ABS control unit. So U0101, lost communication with TCM. And then U0100, lost communication with ECM / PCM. So it looks like the ABS control unit cannot talk to the TCM and the ECM. So we have 2 trouble codes in the body control module. So the same trouble code is also here. This U0101, lost communication with transmission control module. And then the second trouble code in the body control unit is P1009, humidity sensor module. And then let's keep scrolling. So the drivetrain control module has 1 code, same trouble code, U0101, lost communication with TCM. Okay, so notice something here, guys. I hope you are noticing what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that we have a repetitive U0101. So this trouble code over here, this lost communication with transmission control module, is basically in every module. Okay, and same thing over here on this electronic shifter module. Okay, we have U11C3 ESM, lost communication with TCM on DPT CAN. Okay, so it looks like the electronic shifter is not talking to the transmission control module. So this is why we have all these lights on here on this shifter selector, because this module, the module is in the back of this module is not talking to the transmission control module. So that's why all these lights are lit, because it doesn't know what gear to show over here, because it cannot communicate with the transmission control unit, okay? And the same code is here, U0101, lost communication with transmission control module, bus signal / message failure. Okay, and same thing in the instrument panel control unit, lost communication with TCM. Okay, so even in the radio control unit, the U0101 trouble code is also found there, lost communication with TCM. Okay, so this is good to know. At this point, with this U0101 pretty much being set on most modules, I'm going to go after this trouble code, okay? I'm gonna ignore these other trouble codes over here, like this one, for example, lost communication with electric gear shift module. So the electric gear shift module, it's this guy over here. I'm going to ignore that right now. I'm gonna go after this one because this is repetitive, okay? You have this trouble code pretty much on the rest of the modules, pretty much on all the modules. And I'm sure that if there's no communication, if the transmission control unit is not talking to the other modules, this code will most likely be set also. So this one is gonna cause this one to be set, okay? So now what I need to do is I wanna back out of here. Actually, before we back out, I wanna point out something else. I don't know if you noticed, on this list of modules, there is no transmission control module here. Pretty much we have all the modules listed, but not the transmission control module. Usually the transmission control module comes after the engine. So this is the engine module, this is the ABS, but the transmission control module is missing, okay? Which means the transmission control module is not communicating, okay? So this again proves this trouble code. If we scroll down once again, in case you didn't pay attention, if we scroll down, you will notice that the transmission control module is not here. So airbag, amplifier, BCM, body control module, electric power steering, electric shifter module. So as you can see, pretty much all the modules are here, but the transmission control module. Okay, good. So let's back out of here. Now we have a list of all the modules that are supposed to be on this vehicle. Now, if you look over here on the right hand side, there is engine and transmission. So this is the transmission module. So now I'm going to try to go straight to the transmission module to see if the scan tool will be able to communicate with it. So now let's click on transmission. So right off the bat, we have a message that says no communication. Is key on? Yes, the key is on, but the scan tool cannot communicate with the transmission control module. Let's try it once again. So let's exit. Let's try to talk to the engine computer. So let's go to engine. So right there, once we click on engine, we get into the engine computer and we can read codes out of the engine computer. As you can see, we have 3 trouble codes in the engine computer. So let's back out and try to read codes out of the transmission control module. So let's click on that. As you can see, we have a message that says no communication. Yes, the key is on. So once again, we have confirmed our problem. So the problem here is the transmission control module that's not talking, okay? Since the transmission control module is not talking, that's why we have all these lights that are lit up over here. Now, since the transmission control module is not talking, we have to figure out why this transmission control module is not communicating with the scan tool or with the other modules on the vehicle. Just like any computer, for it to run, you have to send power to it. So just like your computer at home, you cannot get it turned on before you plug it into the power outlet, right? So it's the same thing with computers on the vehicle. Any control module needs power and ground in order to run. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go to this transmission control module and check power and ground to make sure that this computer is being powered. If the computer is being powered and it still doesn't communicate, then at that point the problem is just a defective control unit. So let's back out of here. Now what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go to service information. We're gonna look up the transmission control unit wiring diagram. We have to familiarize ourselves with how this transmission control unit is wired, and then we will proceed with the tests. So let's go to, this is a 1500 Laramie, so it's this one. So here is the transmission control unit wiring diagram. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to locate the TCM on this wiring diagram first. So over here is our transmission control unit, okay, integral to valve body on transmission. So basically the transmission control module on this vehicle is part of the valve body, and this transmission control module lives inside the transmission. So that's good to know. Now, when we look at this transmission control module over here, it looks like it doesn't have a lot of wires. Now what we need to do is we have to find our power wires and our ground wires. So right over here we have one ground wire, so this wire over here, pin 14. So this black wire is a ground, and it's grounded at the right rear corner of engine compartment. So this has one ground wire, and then as you can see over here it says fused B positive. So this is a power supply wire, so pin 13. It is a yellow wire with a red tracer. So there's a power supply wire here, and then there's another one over here. So ignition, off, run, start, control. So it looks like this is the ignition power feed. So this wire over here gets power when the key is turned on. And this is a pink wire with a white tracer, okay? So this transmission control module has two power wires and one ground wire. And it has some communication wires over here. So at this point, we kind of gonna ignore these communication wires for now. Right now, we're just gonna focus on the power wires and the ground wire. That's all, okay? If there's power here on this wire, and then this one, if there's power on both wires, and there's ground over here, then our focus is gonna shift towards the communication lines, and at that point, the problem would just be the module itself. But for now, let's go and check these power wires and this ground wire. So this is under the truck. We're gonna have to go under the truck and get at the transmission electrical connector so we can do the test over here. Now, if you see these wires over here, if you follow these wires, you will notice that these wires go up, okay? So let's follow these two wires, these two power supply wires. So this one and then that one. So let's follow these two. I want to see where they go. Looks like they go to a fuse. Okay, so there's this one, fuse 57. It's a 20 amp fuse. So this fuse over here supplies power to the transmission control unit. And then this one over here, this wire gets power from the BCM, okay? It gets power from the body control module. So the body control module sends ignition power to the transmission control unit. Actually, let me highlight these wires, because these are the wires we're going to test. So that one wire is coming from the BCM, and the other one is coming from the fuse under the hood. As you can see here, it says power distribution center assembly, left front of engine compartment. Okay, let's check this fuse. We don't have to check this fuse over here, fuse 94, because this fuse supplies power. So this over here, let me highlight this. This other wire here, this wire, that fuse over there supplies power to the electronic shift module. And the electronic shift module is working. So we don't have to check that fuse, because if that fuse was open, these lights over here wouldn't have been lit up. Okay? And as you can see, this module only has one power supply wire and one ground wire. So this is good. We're not going to check fuse 94. We're just going to check fuse 57. Okay? And it may just be as simple as a blown fuse. So let's go under the hood and check this fuse and see what we're going to find. So now let's go under the hood. Alright guys, so we are here under the hood. So I got my test light. We're gonna use this test light to test our fuse. So the key is on inside the truck. So let's test our test light first. So test light is connected to battery ground. If we touch power, the test light should light. So right there, test light is good. So now let's find our transmission fuse. As you can see, there are a bunch of fuses in this fuse box. So let's see where our transmission fuse is. So our transmission fuse is right there. Hope you can see that right there. F57, it says transmission. So that's the fuse we're gonna check. And if you look over here on this fuse layout, oops, I hope you guys can see. I'm sorry for the glare, guys. So it's right up there, fuse 57. So fuse 57 is this one, this 20 amp fuse. So this over here is fuse 57. So the key is on. Let's see if we have power on both sides of the fuse. So there's power there, there's power here, power here, power here. So the transmission fuse is good. So now what do you do when your fuse is good? Well, at this point what we have to do is we have to go down to the transmission control unit and test our powers and grounds at the transmission control unit electrical connector. Okay? Because the fuse is good, but our problem is the transmission control unit is not communicating. So we cannot talk to the transmission control unit. So we're gonna go to the transmission control unit and check powers and grounds at its connector. So now let's go under the truck. So before we get the truck up in the air, I want to show you these jumper cables that I'm using. So I have the positive cable on the positive terminal of the battery, and then the black one on the negative terminal of the battery. I'm gonna use these so I can know that I have good power and good ground coming from the battery. So I will use these jumper cables under the truck to test my powers and grounds at the transmission control unit. So now let's lift the truck. Alright guys, so we are here under the truck. So here is the transmission. That's our transmission right there. And the electrical connector of the transmission control module is right over here. So this is the electrical connector of the transmission control module. And remember, as we read on the wiring diagram, the transmission control module is inside the transmission. Okay, so now we're going to test our powers and grounds at this electrical connector. So we're going to back probe this black wire over here. So there is the black wire. So I'm gonna get it back probed and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright guys, so I back probed the black wire, which is the ground supply wire for the transmission control unit. So we're gonna use our test light to check the ground wire. So I have my test light connected to battery positive. If I touch ground, my test light should light. So let's touch this bolt over here. As you can see, I touch ground, my test light lights. Okay, so my test light, one side of the test light is connected to B positive. Once I touch ground, the test light lights. So now let's test this ground wire of the TCM. So right there, I touched the back probe tool, my test light lit. So right there. Okay, so this tells me that there is ground going to the transmission control unit. Okay, so our ground is there, so that's good. So now we're gonna test our power supply wires. Alright guys, so we checked the ground wire with the test light connected to battery positive. We touched pin 14, our test light lit. So this wire over here is good. So the transmission control unit is receiving ground. Okay, so that's good. So now we're gonna test our two power supply wires. I'm going to back probe this pink wire with a white tracer and then this yellow wire with a red tracer. I will get these two wires back probed at the TCM electrical connector and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright guys, so I back probed our two power supply wires to the transmission control unit. The red back probe tool is connected to the pink wire with a white tracer, and then the black back probe tool is back probing the yellow wire with a red tracer. Alright, so I got my test light connected to ground. If I touch power, my test light should light. So let's touch the first wire. So let's touch the first back probing tool. So right there, as you can see, my test light is lit. So there is power on the pink wire with a white tracer. Let's check that once again. So right there, my test light is lit. So there is power on this pink wire. So now let's test the other power supply wire. Bam. There is a problem, guys. There is no power on the yellow wire with the red tracer. So right over here, test light lights, but on the other one, the test light doesn't light. Okay, so this is the problem, guys. We have found the problem. This is what's causing the transmission control module to not communicate, because it's just receiving power on one wire. The other wire is missing power. And this is the wire that's coming from the fuse that we checked under the hood. And the fuse is good, okay? Since the fuse is good, but there's no power here, the problem is an open. So there's an open circuit between the fuse under the fuse box, okay, and this wire over here. All right. So here test light doesn't light, but over here test light lights. So we are missing power at the transmission control unit. So now I'm going to show you what I just did on the wiring diagram. Then we will talk about what we're going to do next. So here is what we just did. We checked the ground wire. So there's ground at the transmission control unit. We checked the power supply wires. There is only one wire that has power. And the wire that has power is this one over here, pin 9. So this pink wire and a white tracer is the only wire that has power. But this yellow wire with the red tracer doesn't have power. And this wire is coming from the body control unit. And this wire has power with the key on. So the body control unit is definitely sending power to the transmission control unit with the key on. But this wire over here doesn't have power. And if we follow this wire, it goes to a fuse in the fuse box. This fuse over here, fuse 57. And we just checked this fuse. This fuse is good. Since the fuse is good, but we don't have power at the transmission control unit, then the problem is an open between the transmission control unit and the fuse. So somewhere down this leg of the circuit, there is an open somewhere, okay? So that's gonna be what we have to figure out next. But for now, what we could do, since this power is coming from the fuse, okay, the wire goes basically from the fuse down to this transmission control unit. We can actually bypass this wire with a jumper wire, so we can send power straight from a jumper wire from the battery to the transmission control unit. We can send power here to see if we will be able to communicate with the transmission control unit, okay? If the problem is just this open on the wire here, if we send power to this wire, we should be able to talk to the transmission control unit, and this truck should be able to start. Actually, before we do that, let's try to communicate with the transmission control unit. Let's go to scanner. Let's go to transmission. As you can see, we have a no communication message, so we cannot talk to the transmission control unit. So if I go to engine, watch this. If we go to engine, as you can see, we can read codes. So we can read codes out of the engine control unit, and we have a lost communication code, okay? Now, if we back out and go to the transmission control unit, we have a no communication message. So we cannot talk to this module. And we can't talk to the module because it's missing one power, okay? One power wire doesn't have power. So this is why we cannot talk to the transmission control module. And this is why this truck cannot start, because the transmission control module is unable to talk to these other modules. So the engine control unit cannot start the engine because it doesn't know what gear the transmission is in. So let's go back to our wiring diagram. So I'm going to bypass this wire. I'm going to send power, straight power, to this pin over here, okay, pin 13. I'm going to send power to pin 13, and after I send power here, I'm sure we will then be able to talk to the transmission control unit, and after that, I'm sure the truck will start, okay? After we start the truck, then our problem will just be finding the open in the circuit. We're gonna find where the open is and fix the open, and after that, this vehicle will be fixed, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a jumper wire to send power, okay, to this pin over here. Now, since I have my jumper, this long jumper wire coming from under the hood on the battery, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some jumper wires, okay, and connect them to my back probe tool over there, so we can send power to that yellow wire that's missing power. After we send power there, we will be able to talk to the transmission control unit. So I'm gonna send power to that pin. All right, so I'm gonna connect this jumper wire to this back probing tool over there. So right there, I'm connecting to that back probing tool that's connected to the yellow wire. So now this is gonna go to my power wire coming from the battery. So I'm gonna connect this guy over here. So right there. Now I'm sending power straight from the battery to that wire that's missing power. So now if that's the problem, if that's the only problem that this vehicle has, we should be able to now talk to the transmission control unit, and after I erase the trouble codes on the scan tool, all the lost communication with the transmission control unit trouble codes will go away. And if we go inside the truck, we should be able to start the truck now. So now let's look at the scan tool. Remember before we could not talk to the transmission control unit, so now let's see if we can talk to it. So right there, now we are inside the transmission control unit. So this is the problem, guys. As you can see, we don't have any trouble codes in the transmission control unit. So let's back out. So that's good. Remember before, when we clicked on transmission, we had a no communication message. But watch this. Once we click on it, now we can get inside the transmission control unit. Okay, so that's good. At this point, this truck should be able to start. Let's back out. So let's go to the engine computer. Let's see if we still have that lost communication code. So these codes are still here. So now I'm going to back out and erase these trouble codes. Let's see if these trouble codes will now go away. Alright, so let's read the codes. Bam. Now we no longer have any trouble codes in the engine computer. So this is good, guys. If we go inside the truck, this truck will start. Okay, so we're gonna leave this jumper wire over there. Okay, I'm gonna leave that jumper wire there. I'm gonna lower the truck, then we're gonna go inside the truck to start it. I know right now the truck is gonna start. After we start the truck, then the next thing will be finding the open. We gotta find where the open is in the circuit. Once we find the open, we fix it, this vehicle will be fixed. So now let's go inside the truck and start it. Alright guys, so we're back in the truck. Now we're gonna see if jumping that power supply wire has fixed the problem. If our problem was just that power that was missing on the transmission control unit, now this truck should start. Now, right off the bat, there's one thing I noticed. I'm gonna show it to you. Look at this. What do you see here? Remember, before, with the open in that power supply wire, all these LED lights over here were lit up, okay? All these gears, all the lights on these gears were lit up. But now, only the light above the park is lit up. So that means now the transmission control unit is communicating. I mean, we already checked that with the scan tool. And this shifter, the shifter selector module also is able to communicate with the transmission control module, so it knows what gear the transmission is in. Since it knows what gear the transmission is in, now the truck should be able to start. So this here already tells me that this is fixed. Remember, we had all these lights that were lit up, but now only one is on, so this is good. So I'm gonna step on the brake pedal. Okay, so I'm gonna push the button, so this truck should start. So right there. Okay, the truck is running and there are no lights on the dash. Okay, so the truck is now running. So this is fixed. Now what we need to do is we have to find the open in the circuit, in the power supply wire. Okay, we have to find where the open is. Okay, so this is fixed. All these lights are no longer lit up, so let's turn it off. Okay, engine off. Let's start it. So right there. Okay, so engine is running. Let's bring up our scan tool. If we go to transmission, we can talk to the transmission control unit. There are no codes in the transmission control unit, so we're good. Okay, only one light is on. Okay, so now I'm gonna step on the brakes. If I go to reverse, the light will move from park, will go to reverse. Watch this. As you can see, we are in reverse, neutral, drive. Okay, so this is how it's supposed to be. Now park, that's awesome. But when there is a fault, then all these lights come on. Okay, so let's do one thing before we find the open on that wire. Let me turn off the truck. Okay, as you can see right now, only this light is on, the light above the P. Okay, okay, just this one is on. Okay, let's start it once again. Awesome, it's fixed. So I'm gonna turn it off. Now I'm gonna go under the truck and disconnect that jumper wire that we connected. So once we disconnect that jumper wire that we connected to the back probing tool, now all these lights will be lit up. Okay, because now the fault will be present, which is an open in one of the power supply wires. So let's go under the truck and disconnect that jumper wire that we connected to the yellow wire with the red tracer. So let's go under the truck and remove that jumper wire and see what happens. Alright guys, so we are back under the truck. As you can see, I'm sending power to the yellow wire with a red tracer through these jumper wires over here. Okay, so we are bypassing the whole wire with these small jumper wires. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect these jumper wires. So now I'm going to remove the power that I sent to the yellow wire. So let me remove this. Okay, so the jumper wire is disconnected. So now let's go back inside the truck and see what we're going to find. I'm sure right now with these jumper wires removed, our fault will be back. So now let's go inside the truck. Alright guys, so we are back in the vehicle. So at this point, I'm just duplicating the fault, okay? We already know that that's the problem, that one wire is missing power, so it's open somewhere. Right now, the next step will be finding the open, okay? So I have disconnected the jumper wires that I installed. So now let's see if the truck will start. I'm sure right now, we cannot communicate to the transmission control unit, and all these lights will now be lit up. So watch this. I'm gonna try to start it. Right there. So I'm pressing the button, nothing's happening. Okay. Okay. So now it is a no crank, no start condition. And as you can see over here, all these lights are light up. Now, if I bring my scan tool, remember when we went to the transmission control unit, we were able to read codes out of it. Now let's go to the transmission control unit now. Right there, no communication, okay? So now we cannot communicate with the transmission control unit. So let's back out. Now let's go to the engine computer. I'm sure now we have a U0101 trouble code that we had before that said lost communication with TCM. I'm sure that trouble code is back. Watch this. So right there, U0101 lost communication with TCM. Okay, so we have duplicated the fault. We know 100% that that's all it needs. Once we fix that power wire, this will be fixed. Okay, now let me back out And let me try to erase this. Since it's a hard fault, it's not gonna get erased. If we read the codes again, you will see that the trouble code is still there. Okay? Alright. So now let's go under the truck and reconnect the jumper wire again. I'm sure once we reconnect it, if we come back in the truck, these lights will be off. Only the light above the P will be on and the truck will start. As you can see right now, I cannot start it. So let's do this once again. Let's go reconnect the jumper wire and start it one more time, and then we will find the open in the wire. So let's do that. Alright, so we're back under the truck. So now I am going to reconnect this jumper wire to this power wire over here that's coming from the battery. Once I reconnect this, we should be able to start the truck. So right there, let's go inside the truck and start it once again, and then we'll come back down here to look for our open in the circuit. So now let's go inside the truck. Alright guys, so we're back in the truck. So right off the bat, I can see a difference. So as you can see right now, all these lights that were on before are no longer on. Okay, only the light above the P is on, so which is showing the gear the transmission is in. Okay, so now we're good. Again, at this point, I'm just duplicating the fault. We know that the yellow wire is missing power, so there's an open in that yellow wire. So now that we are bypassing this wire again, the truck should be able to start. So let's try to start it. So right there, truck is running. So I'm gonna turn it off. Okay, so if I bring up our scan tool, we will see that we're gonna be able to talk to the transmission control unit. So right there, as you can see, we are able to talk to the transmission control unit. Okay, so that's good. We duplicated our fault once again. So the problem is an open wire on the other wire that supplies power to the transmission control unit. So this wire over here, because as soon as we bypass it, the transmission control unit starts to talk, the truck starts, and everything is fine. So there's an open between the transmission control unit and this fuse up here. Okay, so now what we need to do is we have to go under the truck and find where this open is. Okay, so let's go under the truck and do that. We're gonna look along the transmission wiring harness. Let's see and look around all the contact points, because opens and shorts will usually occur where the harness is touching something. Okay, whether it's touching the transmission or the body, because over time those contact points can move and then they can rub against, the harness can rub against the body or the transmission itself, and you can have opens there. Or a connector also can be dirty or corroded. That can also cause an open. So let's go under the truck and find this open. So this is going to be the fun part. I'm going to leave the key on. So let's go under the truck and find this open circuit. So we're back under the truck once again. So I'm going to remove this jumper wire that I put over here. Okay, I can actually hear the beep inside the truck, so our fault is now present. So let's remove these jumper wires that we put over here. So right now, let's look around the transmission and see if we're gonna find any obvious signs of the wiring harness rubbing against the transmission itself. So the harness over here, for example,